Now we get into the cell. January smiling. She says, oh, I want to learn some more, Dr. Francis. Please break it down for me. All right, so here we go, January. We're going to break it down. All right, we got to learn the cell. Why? Because if you learn the cell, you can understand the tissue. If you understand the tissue, you're going to understand an organ. Understand an organ, understand organ systems. If you understand organ systems, you understand the organism. That's you and me. But understand, we're going to go from the micro level all the way out to the macro level. To show you, if you understand the basics down here, it's easy to extrapolate out here. All right? So, cell organelles is what we need to understand. Starting out with the nucleolus. All right, sorry, the cell nucleus. The most important cell organelle, is called a nucleus. The most important cell organelle is a cell nucleus. If you damage this nucleus, folks, the cell will die. Does everybody understand? What's the most important cell organelle, Omar? The nucleus. Ferdy, if you damage the nucleus, what happens? The cell will die. So that means damage to the nucleus is the first sign of irreversible cellular damage. You understand, Al? That means if you damage this nucleus in any way, Al, what's going to happen to this cell? Say that again, sorry. If you damage this nucleus in any way, what's going to happen to this cell? It's done. What's going to happen to this tissue? It's done. What happens to the organ? It's done. What happens to the organism? I'm starting to see Jesus on the wall already. Thank you. That's my point, man. You start from the micro, bring it out to the macro. That's the point. It means if I see nuclear damage, put away the TPA, streptokinase, it's too late. That's the big picture I want you guys to see. How does a pathologist help you in deciding when no therapy is going to help? Anytime there's nuclear damage, you might as well forget all your therapy. It will not work. Everybody understand that? Okay, big picture. All right. In the middle of a nucleus is this little circle. For a long time, I thought they were messing up on the picture. It's a circle called a nucleolus. The nucleolus only gives us one thing, then V. That one thing is ribosomal RNA. Ribosomal RNA. You only have two types of ribosomal RNA. Well, two types of ribosomes. One is floating around free within the cell, January. One is floating around free within the cell, Kathia. Free floating ribosomes produce proteins you use within the cell. Free ribosomes, once again, produce proteins that you use within the cytoplasm of that cell. So when we do biochemistry and you learn all the pathways that go on in the cytoplasm, that's how they can make it sound more specific, Paul. It's by saying, well, gee, where would you synthesize hexokinase? You would just have to remember hexokinase is using glycolysis in the cytoplasm of the cell. Now the question is easy. Okay, but to put the word hexokinase in there, aha, makes it sound like it's real picky. That's why if you focus on hexokinase, you'll forget what you've learned, and then you start trying to remember what you read about hexokinase. No, you didn't read it. Okay, it's a combination of two pieces of information in order to get it right. Okay, that's the type of questions they're asking on the boards. So again, the second type of ribosome is roughier. Ribosomes, Thomas, when they're attached to their endoplasmic reticulum, produce proteins that need to be packaged. That means they need to be sent somewhere. Do you understand, Thomas? You understand, Ferdy? All right, let me start working on the rest of the row. Oh, wait a minute. What's my man over here? Oh, Ajay. Okay, I got it. Ajay, right? Did I get it right? Ajay. All right. A-J-A-Y. So just Ajay. Okay. One short A, one long A. I got it now. All right. So Thomas, to the right of Thomas. No, to the right of Thomas. First name. Bia what? Biatola. Biatola. How do you spell it? B-E-R-T-H-O-L-A. Biatolan. Biatolan. What does that mean in French? It's just like Hidriga. After a while, I get, yeah, fine. Okay, so biatolan. What does that mean in French? Okay. My biatolan. Okay, biatolan. Gotcha. Biatolan. To the right of biatolan. What is it? Margov. Bargov. Okay, I remember seeing that name, Bargov. All right. What does that mean in your language? Don't know. Okay, Bargov. Gotcha. To the right of Bargov. Samir? Tamir. Bargov, Tamir, Biatalon. Ooh, I got some work. Okay, Biatalon, we got the most important cell organelle is what? The nucleus. If you damage the nucleus anyway, what's going to happen to that cell, Biatalon? It's going to be damaged for good. What's going to happen ultimately to that cell, Biatalon? Die. That means the first most important sign of irreversible cellular damage, Bargov, is what? Huh? The first most important sign of irreversible cellular damage is what? What cell organelle damage? Nuclear damage. If you damage that nucleus, there's no coming back. Do you understand that? You understand, Tamir? All right, what comes from the nucleolus, Tamir? Ribosomal RNA. And if we go over here, Diana, free-floating ribosomes make proteins that ultimately end up where? Within the cytoplasm of the cell. Everybody understand? Rough ER. So rough ER, ribosomes attached to endoplasmic reticulum produce proteins that ultimately end up where? Diana. No, they just have to be packaged. No one place. They go to a lot of places. But everybody understand the difference between free ribosomes and rough ER, because that's the question they're going to ask. All right, so that's the nucleus. So irreversible cellular injury, first thing is nuclear damage. Well, it can happen for one of two reasons. The first reason is called apoptosis. Apoptosis is programmed cellular death. You got to go quietly, Michelle. Apoptosis. Got to go quietly. When it's time to go, in apoptosis, the periphery will disintegrate first. How do you know that? Because all you do is ask them, who has the software for cellular death? It's your nucleus. So he has to go last. Whenever you have programmed cellular death, i.e. apoptosis, the nucleus will go last. Everybody understand that? That means the periphery of the cell membrane, will disintegrate first. That I call an implosion. Everybody understand what I mean? Implosion, you go in this way. Start from the periphery. So they'll ask you, which of the following descriptions, typifies a cell undergoing apoptosis. Just look at the word periphery. I don't care what comes after that. Click, move, next question. The rest, details to me. I've seen the answer just be your peripheral aggregation of who cares. Click, next question. I don't stick around to see of what. Who cares? They said periphery, that's the most important issue. That's my point. The more details you get into, the more details are going to be used against you now. Then you say, well, maybe I don't remember that being part of the periphery. See, now you're debating the wrong issue. Issue is periphery. I don't care what comes after that. All right, so apoptosis, cell membrane disintegrates first. It's programmed cellular death, and because of that, Maria, it's non-inflammatory. Means it doesn't set off any problems. Why? Because your body knew it was going to happen. That's right, Michelle. Your body knew that skin cell on your toe was going to die today. So because the body knows, nobody says a word. Charlie's going. Well, it was his time. He was 84 hours old, man. That's a long time. For a skin cell, that is a long time. So he's got to go. That's why the body doesn't do anything about it. Well, look at the main words that they'll use. Pygnosis. Pick your nose. The nucleus forms blebs. That's the way we remember. Pygnosis, picking your nose. You pick out blebs. All right, so they'll describe it, you pick the right term. That's my point. Pygnosis, the nucleus forms blebs. Karyohexis, the nucleus breaks up into chunks. So it was just kind of pinching off, and now you see 7 or 8 pieces to it, and we say karyohexis. And then karyolysis, look at the rest, lysis, dissolve. They'll say the nucleus has dissolved. They say, aha, karyolysis. You understand, Tanvi? When it's not programmed cellular death, then we call it necrosis, Rashmi. You understand, Tamir? You understand? Bargab. All right. Necrosis is not planned. That means it happened on a Tuesday when that cell was supposed to be around for Wednesday. Says, hey, man, how come you're taking me out today? I'm not supposed to go for another 24 hours. No, let me stay around. I'm protesting. Ah! You hear screams and shouts, and then all of a sudden, nothing else. Ooh, what happened to Charlie? Oh, you didn't hear? He's gone. So necrosis produces a lot of inflammation because it wasn't supposed to happen. That means hell, if I see inflammation in your skin, was that programmed or non-programmed? Non-programmed. Was that necrosis or apoptosis? That was necrosis. What part of the cell disintegrated first? That would be the nucleus. You better understand the point. That's how you bring it all the way out to the macro level. That means if you show me a biopsy of any tissue and I see the nucleus is already dissolved and before anything else happens, I say, this is necrosis. If you give me a disease and you describe inflammation, I say, this is necrosis. Everybody follow me? There's so many ways to move that information around as long as you see the big picture. You can use it to answer a lot of questions. Even if you don't know what it is, at least I know it has to have, the answer has to have something to do with necrosis before I look at it. All right, so unexpected, and look down here, you see the same three words. It's just what order it happens in, Tara. When the nucleus dissolves first, we say necrosis. When the nucleus dissolves last, we say, Tara, apoptosis. Everybody understand that? All right. So that means, therefore, Nico, if I see a cell in your body that did not die because it was supposed to die, what failed to happen? I see a tissue that's still there that was supposed to die but didn't die. What failed to happen? When you're supposed to die, Faisal, apoptosis did not occur. Do you understand? I know the boys twos are probably thinking, Dr. Faisal, how is this relevant for boys too? Gammy, tell me what I got to do. I got to break it down one time for you, man. Open up your eyes, show you how many times you use the same information. Let's say I got an extra finger on here. It's not supposed to be here, is it, Tim? What failed to happen? Apoptosis didn't happen. So you got duodenal atresia, Cammy. How come the duodenum is not attached to the rest of the duodenum? What failed to happen? Apoptosis failed to happen. Oh, you got esophageal atresia. Ferdy. How come the esophagus is not attached to the rest of the esophagus? What failed to happen? Thank you. Look at that, folks. Every atresia in your body has just been covered right before your very eyes, but you didn't see it coming. That's the way I roll. You learn more in 10 minutes than you can read in a month, folks, when you see the basics explain all this other stuff. But nobody tells you that. They just keep teaching you all this other stuff, but you still don't know where that information came from. And that means when they pick out another atresia and ask you, hey, what happened? How come you got 8 toes in Patau syndrome? And then you don't have an explanation for it now, do you? Because you think you got to go read about Patau syndrome to figure it out. That's the scam in the question. Is do you already know the concept, or do you think you got to read about Patau's? If you think you got to read about Patau's, then you missed the concept of the question. All right, so apoptosis and necrosis. Everybody understand the difference? Cool. Necrosis now. Let's focus on just that. So everybody understand the big picture for apoptosis. That means a tissue is supposed to leave quietly, no inflammation, nobody knows anything about it. But if I see a tissue that did not go, then you say, well, apoptosis did not occur. Everybody understand that? So every atresia can be explained. Anytime you got extra tissue anywhere in your body and they ask you, how did this thing end up here? You say, okay, apoptosis didn't occur then. Okay, because it's not supposed to be there. All right, so how do we evaluate necrosis? Different types of necroses. The most common cause, the most common type, Paul, the most common reason, Paul, for necrosis is called ischemia. That's the 90%, B-Nish. That is the 90% AJ. Or is it AJ? Oh, AJ. I'll get it by Wednesday. Okay, AJ. You understand that ischemia is the most common cause of all necroses. Do you understand that? What's the most common cause of inflammation? RJ? Huh? Okay, then ischemia must be the answer. Hey, Kathy. Hey, got a quick question for you. If I go to the next point. You know, when you see elderly people and they got tissue missing in the medial wall of the lateral ventricles, what's the most common cause of that? They call it leukoencephalomalacia. I thought maybe you'd come across that reading before. That's just an elderly person who's missing some tissue right here. Medial walls of 2 lateral ventricles. What would be the most common cause of that? Orderly. What's the most common cause of that? Ischemia, Kathy. Sorry. Got to demonstrate this stuff for you. See how the test writer does it? Something so simple, but you forgot. I said elderly people, they're missing the cells. Where would the cells go? Either apoptosis or necrosis, one of the two. What's the most common cause? Come on, right here, folks. Leukoencephalomalacia, just a fancy term. But those are the cells that died. I can tell you why they died. Cammy, what's the most common reason for a small kidney? What's the most common cause for cerebral atrophy? What's the most common reason for dry skin? Everybody follow? You see how simple it's getting? You see how easier it's becoming as you start to see the concepts with me? But before you actually see the concept, if I were to ask you what's the most common cause of dry skin, you'd swear I'm asking you a hard question. When all of a sudden you see, oh, dry skin, that's cells that died. They hung around. Okay, well, still necrosis. Ischemia is the #1 cause of necrosis. Everybody clear? Everybody clear? That means if they ever ask you why cells died and you don't know, you never even heard of the disease, you're not even sure they spell it right, Melanie, what are you going to pick as the most common cause? What are you going to pick as the most common cause, Miguel? What are you going to pick as the most common cause, Thomas? What are you going to pick as the most common cause, Ferdy? Yeah, you say that now. We'll see later. I like to make the challenge fun, folks. I'm warning you and I'm telling you. I'm going to catch you guys. You just got to you got to make sure you're listening carefully to my question. Okay? That's how I know when your mind starts to make the transformation into hearing concepts and clues versus just hearing a lot of details, is when I can just put all kinds of information all around a basic concept and ask you in a whole different way. Because when I come back at you with the same question, you won't hear the same words I just used. It'll be totally different. And that's how I'll know if you really understood that or not. Because I told you, students like to shake their head like this. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, right. You understand? When you can demonstrate for me, you can understand. All right, so that's necrosis. We call it also coagulative necrosis because coagulum, blood clot, ischemia, clot off the blood supply, right? Anytime you have ischemic necrosis, tissue dies, but the architecture is maintained. That's important to know, Ferdy. Tissues die, but the architecture is maintained. What do I mean by that? Diana's asking herself. It means I cut off the blood supply to part of your brain dies, but the rest of the brain still looks like a brain. That's why the prognosis is good. You understand that now, Ferdy? Ischemic necrosis is the 90%, but the prognosis with it is very good. Why? Because architecture is still maintained. The rest of the brain still works. You have an MI, Al. I clawed off a chunk of your ventricle, but guess what? The rest of the ventricle still looks like a ventricle and works like a ventricle. That's why the prognosis is good. Everybody understand? Coagulative necrosis. Purulent. Purulent necrosis. Anytime you see the word purulent, you should think about pus. Anytime you see pus, what should you think about, Nelson? Bacteria. So you see, anytime you see purulent necrosis, you think of bacteria. Everybody understand? Okay? That means each and every time. That means, folks, I know you can have purulent with viruses. I know you can have with spirochetes. I know you can have with fungus. But on an exam, Al, when they say purulent, which one are you picking? Bacteria. Thank you very much. Just so we don't argue. I'm telling you the 90%. I don't want to hear about the few exceptions. For exam's sake, folks, you cannot be thinking about all those other things it could be. On an exam, take the 90. Okay? Because I'm not going to pick the 2% of the time as a fungus. I'm not interested in 2%. I want the 90%. Everybody understand? Purulent, you pick bacteria every time. All right. They say granulomatous. then you pick non-bacterial. They say granulomatous, you say non-bacterial, Chris. Well, when you look at granulomatous, the word granulomatous, Nicole, what two cells are in here? What two cells are represented with granulomatous? B-Nish knows this. Macrophages and? No. Macrophages and? Who always hangs out with macrophages? T cells. So wherever there's one, there better be the other one too. You understand? All right. So granulomatous means T cells and macrophages are represented, Maria. It means non-bacterial. Do I know who besides that is not a bacteria? I don't know who. It could be anybody. All right. Granulomatous. So some words obviously are real specific. Some are not very specific. Granulomatous just rules out bacteria for me. That's it. Can't do anything else. What about fibrinous? Fibrinous means there's fibrin deposition here. Fibrinous means there's fibrin deposition. Anytime you have fibrin deposition, top three things to worry about. Collagen vascular disease is number one. You understand? Eros. You understand? You understand, Tanvi? Anytime they say fibrinous, collagen vascular disease, number one, uremia, as in renal failure, number two, and tuberculosis, number three, in that order. Anytime I give you a list, folks, I try to give it to you in order, because on an exam, when they have multiple right answers, they're really adding a layer of epidemiology to it. Do you know the order in which it should come? Okay? So it's collagen vascular disease, number one, whenever you see fibrinous necrosis. Uremia, as in renal failure, number two, and then TB, number three. Okay? Caseous, Tara. Anytime you see caseous, what do you think of? Cheesy, as in what infection? TB. So, folks, look at this. That means if you say granulomatous, I say, well, it's not a bacteria. You say fibrinous, I say, well, it could be collagen vascular, it could be uremia, it could be TB. But when you say this, then I know for sure it's TB. Everybody understand? So some are very limiting, some are kind of general. That's why they can put more than one clue in a test question. I like the ones that are most specific, folks, the ones that allow me to click without worrying about anything else it could be. Okay, this one, I just know I can cross out bacteria off that list. But that's as far as I can go. Everybody understand me so far? All right, so caseous, cheesy, think of tuberculosis. Fat necrosis occurs in organs where you have mostly fat. Two places they want you to know. Chronic pancreatitis. Remember, the pancreas sits on a bed of fat. So anytime I see fat necrosis in your retroperitoneum, pancreatitis is the issue. You understand, Barga? You understand, Tamir? You understand? Wait a minute. Hang on. Ajay. Did I get it right that time? Yeah. All right. Ajay. Got it now. Okay. So, fat necrosis, chronic pancreatitis. Okay? Number two location, breast. Breast is 95% fat. But when a woman comes in with fat necrosis of her breast, folks, there's more to it than just that. It means she has suffered significant blunt trauma to her breast. That's usually, you know, the battered woman. In the articles, they call it the hidden second diagnosis. She never tells you why she's really coming to see you. She's always complaining about little aches and pains. So on the boards, they always describe it as some woman who comes in kind of shy, head bowed down, looking down on the floor. She doesn't maintain eye contact when she's talking to you. She tells you, oh, it hurts right here, doc. You know, this has just been bothering me. And then, of course, on your physical exam, you find out she's got fat necrosis of the left breast, and they ask you what that means. Okay? So the hidden second diagnosis is she's been battered. Now, if you ask her, what happened here, Ms. Jones? She said, oh, well, I think it was something fell out of that cabinet and hit me there. She'll make up a story to try to hide it. You got to see through all that. Why? Because whenever you have a battered woman, number one, it is never your job to suggest to her she ought to leave her husband or boyfriend. That's one of the most dangerous statements you would ever make. The battering husband or boyfriend is a very violent person. If you suggest to her to leave him, ooh, studies show she's more likely to die in the next 30 days. Because here's what happens. She goes home, and then the next argument they have, and then she blurts out, well, Dr. Johnson told me how to leave your ass anyway. What? He said, what? Uh-oh. Guess who gets shot leaving his office later that evening? You don't want that. So they want you, yeah. You don't want that. Duh. Anyway, the key is here, folks, they don't want the doctors to get messed up in the middle of anything. If you talk to policemen, they'll tell you. They hate to be called in on domestic violence like that. They know 9 out of 10 times she goes back the next day. So the day they come there, oh, yeah, she wants to press charges. Of course, they arrest him, put him in jail. Guess who comes to bail him out later that night? Same woman that was sure she wanted to put him in jail tonight. So that's why they don't want you in the middle. And that's why the cops need to be in the middle, too, because they already know what the outcome is going to be 9 out of 10 times. She's going back to him. But here's what we do. Anytime you see someone who's been battered, you let the social services handle it. That means you report it to social services like any other abuse case. Well, the way social service usually handles it is to come to her in like in a third-person conversation. Well, you know, a woman who's in this situation, if she would ever make up her mind that she truly wanted to leave this man because of the chances she might get herself killed in that situation, there are options. A lot of women stay in that situation because they think there are no options. They think he's going to come after them and hurt them. But social services will provide that woman a new address, unknown to him, legal service that's free to her. The only time she will ever have to see him again is when he's arraigned in court. But she has to be sure she truly wants to leave this situation. It's like an alcoholic, folks. I cannot help you if somebody else makes you come to Alcoholics Anonymous. Everybody understand what I'm saying? If the person who's the alcoholic does not come of their own free will, the chance of healing him is close to 0. That's why you can't force them to leave that relationship. So don't you say that. Let that person make up her mind. But if she does, she needs to know that these things are available to her, that there is a way to stay away from him without fear of reprisal. They'll give her a whole new ID and everything, and address when the case is over. Okay? So that's important to understand that. So fat necrosis, chronic pancreatitis, significant trauma to the breast. What about hemorrhagic necrosis? If you got hemorrhagic necrosis occurs in any organ, Thomas, that has 2 or more blood supplies. What organ in your body has 2 or more blood supplies? Who? The liver, portal vein, hepatic artery. Maria, 2 or more blood supplies. Okay. Michelle? GI. Remember, you got superior mesenteric, inferior mesenteric, gastroduodenal, gastroepiploic. There's a ton. Tim, 2 or more blood supplies. So let's try PJ. Which one? Lung. All right. Pulmonary arteries, bronchial arteries. Tina? Brain. You got vertebrals, anterior, middle, and posterior cerebral arteries. So lots of blood supply. So anytime you have 2 or more blood supplies, initially that sounds like a good thing, doesn't it, Al? Initially that sounds like a good thing, doesn't it, Tamir? Initially that sounds like a doggone good thing, doesn't it, Eros? But not always. Here's the problem. 2 blood supplies. 2 things can happen. If you cut off one blood supply slowly, this blood supply will come in and provide nutrition. You won't even know you've lost this blood supply. Everybody follow me? You know how many people at autopsy study had one carotid artery completely occluded for years, never knew anything about it? Circular Willis takes over. You don't have to worry about it. That's when it happens slowly. Atherosclerosis is a slow process. That's why not a problem. That's why I see that question a lot on board's questions. They'll say, oh, what's going to be the presentation for a person who slowly occludes his common carotid? Absolutely nothing. They won't even know it ever happened. Everybody follow me? Okay? Here's when there's a problem, when there's a sudden disruption of one blood supply. All right? So this side didn't have a chance. So all of a sudden, boom, clot, no blood supply. This blood supply didn't have a chance to produce collaterals. It's going to try to recanalize this. Okay? The problem is this. Free radicals. Free radicals. I told you I have no friends, didn't I, Diane? They have no friends, do they? No. Free radicals start to show up whenever you have inflammation, starting at 3 hours. Starting at 3 hours. Wait a minute, Tim. Hey, what's the most common type of stroke, Tim? Huh? Ischemic stroke. 90% of strokes are ischemic. Imagine that. Straight off the table. Okay? Good or bad prognosis, Tim? No, ischemic is good. Remember, the rest of the brain still looks like a brain. That's why it works. That's why we just give you a lot of rehab, and you're going to do fine. Everybody follow me? But if you get a hemorrhagic necrosis, hemorrhagic stroke, poor prognosis. Everybody understand that? The reason is this. When the blood supply comes through on this side, after 3 hours, it comes in with free radicals already made. Free radicals, I told you, have no friends. They'll come into an area that's already ischemic and damaged and damage it some more. That's called reperfusion injury. Sound familiar? What do you think happens when you remove a clot after an MI? Why does the CPK rise again? Oh, they love to ask you to explain that one. Well, you have to do it, folks. If you want the patient to live, you have to remove that clot. And that's why CPK rising tells us, oh, good, you must have busted a clot because I see CPK rising because here come the free radicals. Well, that means when you have a stroke, we said that 9 out of 10 times it's ischemic. Or 1 out of 10 times it's hemorrhagic. How do I know which one it is, Bertolin? How do I know whether it's ischemic or hemorrhagic? That's all right, let's take it to Nicole. How would you know if it's ischemic or hemorrhagic, Nicole? That's all right, let's take it to Al.
Cell architecture is maintained.
Well, how do I know you got ischemia or you look at it? So how do I look at it, Al? It's called a CT scan. That's why when somebody comes in a stroke, Cammie, what's the first thing we do? We do a CT scan. I'm telling you, folks, how this stuff translates to management. There's no memorization. If you understand the physiology of a problem, you know how to manage it. Versus a lot of students just read all kinds of articles about management, but you still don't even know the physiology to the problem. You're just regurgitating what somebody told you to do. All right, so you do a CT scan. Ischemic stroke does not show up for 48 hours. Hemorrhagic stroke shows up right away. So the key, Miguel, is just to make sure it's not hemorrhagic. Do you understand me? You understand me, Dan? You do that CT scan and make sure it's not hemorrhagic, because if it's hemorrhagic, is that good or bad prognosis, Dan? Bad prognosis. You know what you do for those people? Hospitalize them. Put them in the ICU. Call a neurosurgeon in case you got to hack out some of their brain because the brain swells too much. And pray for your patient. Here it is, folks. Look up the treatment and see if I'm lying. If it's ischemic stroke, that means there's a clot there, right, Dan? When do free radicals show up, Dan? Starting at when? No, starting at what hour? When do free radicals show up? 3 hours, Cammie. When somebody has a ischemic stroke, what window do you have to use TPA to bust that clot open? 3 hours. Gee, I wonder where they got that 3 hours from. See, that's what I'm saying. By the time you guys get to the articles, you don't even know where the basic came from. 3 hours, you better bust that clot open, because after 3 hours, free radicals come. Don't use TPA anymore. Does everybody understand why? The brain will turn to mush. That is not a good thing, to turn the brain to mush. It's not coming back. That's why they say, if you can find somebody who can tell you, yeah, it happened at 12:07. Okay, good. It's only 2 o'clock. We got time. Start the TPA drip right now. But if you don't have somebody that can tell you exactly when that stroke happened, do not take chances. Because after 3 hours, here come free radicals to destroy the area. Yes? Excuse me? Large dose of vitamin E? Yeah, that's the reason why you're giving the vitamin E, to eat up the free radicals. That's correct, because free radicals will do more damage when they come into that area. Okay? So, hemorrhagic necrosis, folks, bad prognosis. Ischemic, good prognosis. Everybody follow? All right. So, not a good thing. Anytime you see hemorrhagic infarct, then that's how you know the outcome is going to be pretty bad here. Well, you know, Luther Vandross had a hemorrhagic stroke. What did they do for him? Hospitalized him, ICU, notified the neurosurgeon in case he needed surgery, and prayed for him. Hey, wait a minute. The Prime Minister of Israel had a hemorrhagic stroke. What did they do for him? Hospitalize him, ICU, notify the neurosurgeon, and then pray for him. What was the outcome? Bad in both cases. See my point? If you understood the basis of it, you'd already know the outcome. Whereas if it's ischemic, we know it doesn't show up for 48 hours. So the CT scan comes back negative. You say, good, it's ischemic. All right, if it's within 3 hours, start the TPA. If it's outside of 3 hours, okay, start them on aspirin. Because arterial clots, aspirin. Venous clots, heparin. It's physio. It's physio that tells you that. All right, let's see. I got to work on the next row. Okay, I did Diana. First name again? What is it? Tony. And then to the right of Tony. Jenny? Tony, Jenny, Tatiana. Tony, Jenny, Tatiana, and Janice. Tony, Jenny, Tatiana, and Janice. All right, Janice, you understand. The most common type of necrosis is what? Ischemic. And anytime you see purulent necrosis, Tatiana, you think of what? Bacteria. If you see granulomatous, Jenny, you rule out what? So you rule out bacteria. That's all you can do. And when you see fibrinous, the first thing to think about, oh, man, I forgot already. I was concentrating on those three. I got you. Tony. I got that. Tony, Jenny, Tatiana, Janice. All right, Tony. When you hear fibrinous, what do you think of? Collagen vascular disease, uremia, and TB. When you hear caseous, Jenny, what do you think of? Tuberculosis for sure. Fat necrosis, what two organs, Tatiana? Pancreatitis and breast trauma. And hemorrhagic necrosis, good or bad prognosis, Janice? Poor prognosis. The best thing you can do is pray for her. Everybody understand? All right. What about finally liquefactive necrosis, Michelle? Liquefactive necrosis means it's half liquid, half solid. Liquefactive necrosis, half liquid, half solid. That's the same thing as an abscess formation. That's the same thing as an abscess formation. The organ most likely to form an abscess, i.e. liquefactive necrosis, your brain. It's already half liquid, half solid. You can have a clot in your brain that turns into an abscess. So the brain, Ajay, is the most likely to form an abscess. You understand? Okay. Well, when you say liquefactive necrosis, that means it's going to be anaerobic in that area. An abscess is anaerobic by nature. You understand, Rebecca? If I say it that way, Rebecca, what organ in your body is least likely to form an abscess then? No, I say, what organ in your body is least likely to form an abscess? If I say that an abscess is anaerobic by nature. That's all right. Let's see if January knows. Let's see if Tina knows. The lung, which has oxygen all the time. That's why, Rebecca, if you have somebody in the hospital who aspirates a whole bunch of anaerobes into his lungs, why do you think they tell you just to use IV penicillin? Don't worry about it. Why? Because it's the area least likely to ever form an abscess. That's why we don't worry. Just give him a little penicillin and cover the anaerobes out of your mouth. Voila. See, that sounds like surgery, because that shows up on surgery questions. Nah, sounds like basics to me. Okay? However, patient comes in with an abscess in his lungs in the area, Faisal, that is the least likely to form an abscess. What's the chances your antibiotic will get in there and kill it? This guy walled himself off with free radicals flying around everywhere. If free radicals can't get through that wall, what's the chance your antibiotic can? Close to zero. That's why they say go cut it out. See, sounds like surgery literature. No, basics, just basics. Okay, basics tell me how to manage any situation. Because you got to understand what's the physiology to the problem. Not just remember what an article told you to do. Tell me the physiology of the problem, then undo it. That's what management is. Okay, so liquefactive necrosis. So purulent, granulomatous, fibrinous, caseous, fat, hemorrhagic, and then liquefactive necrosis. What about if you mess with the chromosomes, Diana? If you mess with the chromosomes, look at that. You die. Why do you die, Diana? Because you're messing with the nucleus. Kathia. What happens to kids who's got monosomy 11? What happens to those kids? What do they look like? They die? What about trisomy 15? They die? What about if you mess with the short arm of chromosome 4? What do they look like? They die? Who cares? You're going to be dying. So who cares about that polyp? The point is, how they make it sound so specific for you on your exam is to pick one chromosome. And you guys will catch the trick. You see? You said, they ask you, what happens in monosomy 5? Students start looking at the answers. Oh, big ears. Yeah, they probably got big ears. Yeah, they got big ears. Oh, they got extra fingers. Yeah, I'll give them 6 fingers on the left hand. You guys just start creating a syndrome. A syndrome that doesn't even exist. They do that on purpose to set you up. Okay, so let me show you how it's done. With any chromosomal problem, I'm going to assume they're going to die. I'll be right 99% of the time. You understand me? Okay. All that stuff you guys are reading out of your books, it's the 1%. I don't care if you want to call it Patau's errors. That's the 1%. That's the trick to the question. They know what you guys are reading out of your books. But that's not the best answer. That's what I'm telling you. Be careful about just quoting what your books say. You better make sure you answer the question the way they asked it. What's the best answer? All right. So the most common cause of every monosomy and every trisomy, look at this. 2 chromosomes are supposed to separate like that. If they go that, I got a monosomy over there, trisomy over here. Everybody understand that? That means the most common cause of every trisomy, every monosomy is exactly the same answer. It's called non-disjunction. Non-disjunction, but 90% of them occur in dad. Why do 90% occur in dad, Maria wants to know? Because dad has hundreds of millions of sperm. Hundreds of millions of little soldiers ready to fight. But those little soldiers don't live that long. So that means, let's say if dad has 300 million sperm, and the incidence of non-disjunction is 0.00000 whatever. Well, mom has only maximum 400,000 when she's born. Well, 0.000 whatever times 400,000 versus 0.00 whatever times 300 million. 300 million, that's going to be a bigger number. Everybody follow me? That's why 90% of the time, non-disjunctions occurred in dad. Everybody follow me? Just by sheer numbers, because that's based on numbers only. You understand, Melanie? You understand, Tina? You understand, Beanish? You understand, Paul? You understand, Jay? Did I mess it up again? No. Oh, I got it. Jay. Okay, I got it. All right. So here's the difference, though. Mom only has 400,000 eggs, even if she only has 1. Mom gets to keep her eggs for life. So that means even though she has 1, there's a greater chance she will transmit it because she gets to keep it for life. Let's say dad has 30 million of them, but those sperm die every day. That means the chance of 1 getting transmitted, pretty slim. You understand the difference? Everybody understand the difference in that information? That means most non-disjunctions, Chris, occur in whom? Mom or dad? Dad. But the ones who get transmitted, Chris, occur in mom or dad. Everybody understand that? That's why, Al, in your books, here's how they mislead you. The longer mom lives, the longer mom waits to have children, the greater the chance that one non-disjunction she has will eventually be transmitted. So that's what they put in your first aid. That's what they put in your Robbins. And then you pick that on the test. Oh, advanced maternal age. See that? What's the most common cause of Down syndrome? Oh, advanced maternal age. They got you again. They got you again because you're busy just always believing everything you read without thinking it through yet. The books are always talking about advanced maternal age. That's simply because if mom has even 1, she's more likely to transmit it. But that is not the most common reason for non-disjunction. Everybody understand that? Okay. So that means the most common cause of every monosomy and trisomy is the same. Well, let me show you a pattern to figure out any monosomy and any trisomy. If you have a monosomy, I'm going to say you're going to die, 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 die. I'll be right 98, 99% of the time. If you're lucky enough to live, things will not grow because you're missing some chromosomes. Does that make sense to everybody? Make sense to you, Jenny? Tatiana, make sense to you? Thomas, make sense? Bertola, make sense to you? All right. Bargav, make sense? All right. So the pattern is, if you're lucky enough to live, things will not grow because you're missing a chromosome. So folks, besides these 5 things you see up here about Turner syndrome, just tell me, Tony, any one thing about Turner syndrome that you now know. Yeah, other than these. Okay, what's the chromosome abnormality? What's the most common cause of Turner syndrome? In mom or dad? Stop hesitating. No hesitation allowed around here. Whatever you think first, that's the one I want to hear. No. If I just ask you the question that way, non-disjunction, in mom or dad, that's just based on numbers. That means dad has 90% of them. Mom has just 1. But if they say about transmission, if the question's got to have transmission in it. If I don't see the word transmission in that question, do not answer mom. Does everybody understand me? That's the bait. That's the trick. They know you've been reading about mom in your books, but that's not the best answer. I'm telling you now, I have not seen that answer get a point yet, and I've had students argue that point so many times. I say, well, show me a question where that's the right answer, because I still to see it. Even though it's written in your books, they know that. But they want to see, do you know the big picture? 90% are going to occur in dad because he's got hundreds of millions. Tamir. Simply because she gets to keep, even if she only has 1, she gets to keep it for life. She doesn't destroy her eggs. Yeah. Every month, 8 to 10 develop. That means that 1 non-disjunction may get a chance to ovulate. All right, so in Turner syndrome, remember this a monosomy. That means she didn't die. So in the least, things will not grow. Everybody understand? So if you say, does Turner syndrome have a small jaw? I say, heck yeah. His jaw didn't grow. He's got short fingers. I say, heck yeah. They didn't grow. Everybody follow me? That's why then when you see things like web neck, you know what a web neck is? The neck never grew. The neck didn't develop. The branchial pouches that give you the neck didn't develop. So all the skin from the neck falls right on the shoulder. That's why it looks like a webbed neck. Notice it goes with our pattern, our concept here. That's why I'm showing you. Don't just memorize this stuff. All this stuff makes sense. That means even if they put this stuff, I've never heard of it, I say, what does that mean? Okay, it goes with not growing. All right, fine, yes. I picked that on the test question. So web neck. Look at cystic hygroma. You know what a cystic hygroma is? When the branchial cysts never develop. So all you got is just a bunch of branchial cysts. So the branchial pouches, rather, never develop. So you're stuck with a bunch of branchial cysts, and then you get lymphedema of all that skin from the neck, and that's what we call a cystic hygroma. You can feel the multiple cysts underneath that. Okay? Gonadal streaks. The gonads didn't develop. See that? That's our central theme, is it not, Tony? Shield-shaped chest. You know what that is, Tony? The shoulders are okay, but the hips didn't develop. That's why it comes in so sharply. Look, their body, their torso then shaped like a shield. Shield-shaped chest. Notice it still goes with our concept. Nothing has changed so far, folks. Now look at that, coarctation of the aorta. The one congenital heart disease that has to do with non-development of the arch of the aorta. Well, gee, I wonder how it happened to be this one. That's my point. Anytime you see a list of things, folks, look hard. There is a pattern that ties them all together. That's the only one I want to know. Because I know that when they get to the exam, they're going to use other words than this. All of these become your clues for Turner syndrome. Not that these are the only features of Turner's that you know. I hope not. Because if they put anything else on that list, that means that something did not develop. That's the one. You still have to pick that one. That is a feature of Turner's. All right, so that's Turner syndrome. So let's look at coarctation of the aorta. So here you have the aorta coming out, and then it narrows. Narrowing of the aorta is called coarctation. That means the arch didn't finish development. It just kind of pinches off. That means the blood pressure up here is going to be a lot higher than the blood pressure down here. Everybody follow that? So that's what we mean by differential pulses. The pulses are going to be stronger up here than down here below the coarctation. So differential pulses will always mean that you got coarctation. Well, nothing's always, but 99% of the time. But let's say the coarctation occurred right before the left subclavian. Then that means the pulse in the right arm is going to be stronger than the pulse in the left arm. So my point is differential pulses. However they want to be differential, up versus lower, or right versus left, doesn't matter. Say coarctation all the time. Everybody understand me? All right. Any questions so far? Andre, any questions? Any questions, Chris? Okay. All right. Then we have something called differential cyanosis. Differential cyanosis means you got a coarctation, but your PDA is still open. Yes? Yeah. Right. Right. So, Faisal, your PDA is here. This is blue blood that should have gone to the lungs. But instead, because you have such low pressure here, that creates a vacuum for it to be sucked back in here. And that's why now you got pink blood up here, blue blood down here. So then we say differential cyanosis. Now they look pink from the nipples up, blue from the nipples down. Differential cyanosis just means you got a coarctation with a PDA. So in other words, differential anything, folks. I'm clicking coarctation. I'm just showing you that, you know, whether it's pulses, pressures, or cyanosis, you know, it's still going to be coarctation, just with or without something else. All right, so January, then we have something called rib notching. Why do we have rib notching? You have a narrowing here. Everything's okay down here. So what happens is the arteries from up here will find a way around and come down like this. What they do is go, you can see them running underneath the ribs. So they erode the inferior margins of the ribs as they course around. And that's how you get the rib notching. And you can see it on x-ray. So again, it's usually something somebody sees by accident on an x-ray. They'll mention it though. That should tell you the answer just like that. Okay? So differential pulses, differential cyanosis, or rib notching, coarctation of the aorta. Any questions on that? Cool? Well, what about trisomies? Again, you're going to say die. Again, you're going to say die, Elvis. You understand? But if you're lucky enough to live, Ferdy, there's got to be some extra tissue somewhere. Everybody see the difference between monosomy and trisomy? In monosomy, you're missing a chromosome, so you got to show me where they're missing some tissue. Everybody understand that? In a trisomy, you got an extra chromosome. Well, you got to show me where the extra tissue is hiding. Everybody follow me? It's not by accident you see, you know, Patau syndrome, polydactyly. That's what I'm telling you. You got to show me where the extra tissue showed up. All right, there has to be extra tissue. You understand, Rashmi? All right, so trisomy. Again, non-disjunction, the most common cause for it. If they live, fine, but they're going to have some extra tissue somewhere. All right, so trisomy 13, Patau syndrome. Trisomy 18, Edwards syndrome. And then trisomy 21, Down syndrome. Well, Kimberly, Patau and Edwards, 13, 18, die within 3 months. So that means we're back down to 1 living to see you in the office. Back down to 99% again. That's my point. Die, 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 die. Make sure you know the most important information before you start knowing the ones that books love to write about. But that's not the most important information. That's the part they never seem to tell students. Yeah, although we're going to write about this, please be advised. This is not the most important information. For that, go to Passport and they'll tell you. Okay? I mean, it's crazy to me. Why do you point me to go read a book and it doesn't even have the 90% in here? You're telling me to read all these weird diseases, and yet when they ask me what's the most common, I have no idea. But that's exactly what happens. And then they want to blame it on you because you can't seem to pick the right answer off the test. And these are the same books they told you to read. It's a crazy system that we have. All right, anyway, trisomy 13, puberty, Patau syndrome. All right, everything's got something about the P in it. See Patau? Polydactyly. It's got 8 fingers on one hand, Tamir. This is a guy you don't want to get into a slap boxing contest with. You might lose this one, Tamir. I heard you were good, but you should see Patau's, man. Swing that hand around, boy. Woo! You can hear the wind coming. Oh, no. Okay? So then, Rebecca, what if they ask you to explain? How come you got 8 fingers on one hand? Give me an explanation for that. 8 pop toes in there. Look at that, Rebecca. Sailing through it now, boy. Seems so easy, see? And you didn't have to go read an article about Patau syndrome to figure that out. You just got to know your concepts and be ready to mix, match, and move it around. Okay? So that's Patau. Polydactyly, first P. Second P, the palate is high arch. That means rather than a small arch, you got too much of an arch. Again, it goes with our theme. You got extra chromosome. Got to be extra tissue. High arch palate. And then you got something's wrong with the P-ing system, as in GU. It just sounds better. Patterns, PPPs, right? P-ing. It's better than PP and GU. I mean, come on, there's no pattern there. So PPP. All right, 3 Ps. And then the fourth P is they got a protruding abdomen. They got a high instance of omphalocele. Again, omphalocele doesn't begin with a P, so I just kind of throw that in, make it a P. Protruding abdomen. So high instance of omphalocele. Okay? So trisomies, Patau syndrome. Next one, Edwards. Trisomy 18. Rock-a-bottom feet. Located in 95, found in 95% of cases. Now you should have seen it. Newborn nursery, a slapboxing contest between Edwards and Patau. Craziest thing I've ever seen. I like Patau, leave that kid alone. Patau said he's getting on my nerves. Come here, boy. So he didn't know about Edwards, though. See, Edwards, Patau just trying to get a hold of him. Hey, come on, rock the wrong way one time. So I get until Edwards rocked the wrong way one good time. Whap! You should have seen that head spin around. That was it. Dead at 3 months. That's why you don't want to see these two guys fighting. It's a bad scene, man, bad scene. But that's how you remember Patau and Edwards. All right, the too many fingers on one hand and then the rock-a-bottom feet going back and forth. Now, in your first aid, they've got Edwards syndrome with rock-a-bottom feet. But I got in parentheses 2% of the time. So let me teach you a concept. There's a concept that says the chance of anything that's not so common happening, the chance that anything that's not so common happening in anybody. Omar, what do I say? In the general population, you say 1 to 3%. If you add one risk factor, Omar, you take it up to what? 10. One risk factor, 10%. In the general population, 1 to 3%. That means if I ask you, Tara, what's the chance of rock-a-bottom feet in your cousin? You say what? 1 to 3%. Because it's always 1 to 3% by chance alone. So for books to put in things that are 3% or less, folks, it's a waste of typing. 1 to 3%, you could have said that for anybody, for anything, and it doesn't mean anything. That's why when they put rock-a-bottom feet under Patau, I say, oh, I hope students are not trying to copy this stuff down. You copy it down here where it says 95% of the time. Okay? 95% of the time. So the chance that anything that's not so common happening, you always say 1 to 3%. If you add one risk factor, say 10%. Everybody understand?